Hi, everyone. It's Kelly from the Hub. I'm here today with Angela, who works with the Community Action Partnership, and she's in the domestic violence program. How are you there, Angela?
I'm good today, Kelly. How are you?
Good, good. So we've been talking a lot about like all the ways we can like identify domestic violence, and like last week we talked about some of the lethality about all of that stuff and how that affects things. So today's topic is my fill in the blank friend, neighbor, sister, aunt, brother is in a relationship where there could be some stuff going on. What should I do? What are my resources? So if you are someone who is it's not you as the victim, but you know someone who's in that situation, this is how do you help. So how do I do it? My friend is in a relationship. What do I do?
Right. So that can create a feeling of powerlessness for the person, for the friend, right? The person who's not in the relationship, but sees this happening to their loved one, and really just wants to like pull them out, right? You see
Right,
somebody floating down the river, you want to pull them out.
right,
Um, so there's a couple of things to keep in mind. Last week we talked about lethality and how dangerous domestic violence situations can be. Um, and so we suggest that it has to be up to the victim in the relationship, and that they have availability or connection to tools and resources for safety planning. So we talked a lot about the research last week. We also know, and this is a longstanding statistic, that it's about 7 times before somebody actually leaves a relationship and stays out of that relationship.
a
Um,
lot. That's a lot.
yeah, it's a process. Like, it's very rare that someone walks out the door and never goes back. Um, they might go and stay with friends or family for a weekend or something like that. Um, they might make a call to a hotline or something like that just to kind of get some information. Maybe they meet with an attorney about a PFA and consider that. Um, Maybe they leave and they go into residential services for a month or two. But relationships are fluid, they're hard, they're difficult, and when we talked on the front end about some of, I think we'll talk about impacts some more, but how deeply impacted their self-esteem could be as a result of the relationship,
Yeah.
and that belief that they're not really worth anything more, or that this is the best that they can do, or they might minimize it like, well, it's not bad all of the time. Um,
Right.
you know,
Everybody has rocky parts in their
right,
relationships. Yeah.
right. And and it's better, I get to stay in my own home with my kids, or whatever the situation is.
Yeah.
um so there's lots of reasons why people don't leave, right? and
Right.
and why they might return. um
Right. And it's real easy on the outside to be like, well, you should just leave. Like,
yeah.
it's real easy to do that when you have because, as much as you may know about your friend, your sister, your whoever's relationship, you don't know as much as they do on the inside.
Right. So that's my word of caution to people, is that there's always more to the story, and that if you try to impose your will on them, you're just starting to do what the abuser's doing, setting up ultimatums, or creating conditions that the victim then has to feel like they're not good enough to be your friend, or that they have to do something more to please you, right? We don't want to put them in that situation.
Right. And as much as you, as the outsider, want to help, you're right. And you know what? I never thought about it that way. And you're absolutely right. Now you're making it harder for that person. It was already ginormously hard. And then you're like, oh no, if you don't leave, I'm not going to be your friend anymore. Like,
Right.
oh,
Right.
you're right. Yeah,
Even if you're not saying that in
right.
those words,
They're going to hear it.
yes, that's the message that they're getting.
Yep.
um and so I think it's really important to be armed with resources in that conversation, and to make it clear that you have their best interest at heart, you're concerned for them, and that you're not going to be judgmental, that you're not going to try and make any decisions for them, and that you just want them to know that there are resources available. And then let it up to them. Let them decide how much they want to talk about it, how many questions they might ask. We have to be just open and ready. And that's what I have told my staff over the years, because we see clients come through, they come in, they go back.
Yeah.
They come in, they go back. They come and maybe get some counseling. Maybe they even get a PFA.
Right.
And then they go back.
And as someone who's trying to help, that's frustrating.
Yeah. Personally, absolutely. Like, you just want to say, what is it that you're not seeing, right?
Right. You want to shake them, because if you shake them, then they'll get it. Right. Because you're so frustrated. That's all
Right.
you feel power. That's all you feel like you can do. Yeah.
Right.
Right. But it's not about you. And that's the thing.
Yes.
It's not about you. It's about the other person. Yeah.
And so that's what I tell people all the time, including our staff. Like, it is not about us in any way, shape, or form. Our job is to be here and to be ready. I believe that every time a victim leaves or makes a phone call, or maybe has a friend make a phone call for them, they're collecting information. They're collecting resources. They're learning more about how processes work. They're building their toolkit. So that way, when they are ready to go, they've got some tools, they've got some resources available to them.
Right.
And it's going to be easier that way. I often suggest that it's better to plan. So do some safety planning, because we know that leaving the relationship is one of the most dangerous times in that relationship.
Right.
Especially if there are weapons, like we talked about last week.
Right.
So we really have to take it seriously, because this is when people die.
Yeah.
So it's not as easy as just walk out the door.
Right. And as an outsider, right, you know that if they don't get help, people will die. So you think you have that urgency in you as the helper, but that's the other thing. If you impose that on that person, they know that. Why are you giving them more problems? Right. But all you want to do is help. So then, right, it's not about you.
Right. And that's, as a friend and a family member, watching somebody go through that, and I have personally experienced that, it feels very powerless.
Yeah.
And especially doing the work that I do,
right,
even more powerless.
Right.
But I also know that it's up to them, and that when they're ready, they will go. And that is the one thing that I plant my flag in, because I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
When they are ready and they have what they feel they need to do it, they will do it. And I've seen it time and time again. So I feel really confident in being able to say that to people. So for the people who are, watching this video and paying attention to our series, I would say call and get the resources. You yourself can learn more about what's available in the community.
Right.
Call us at DVS. We can provide information about safety planning. We can do some counseling with you. We can help you to better understand what the experience of your person might be, and how to be a better support person. I have taken many calls from mothers, mostly. There's a couple of calls that really stick out in my mind, but one recently in the last 6 months, I'd say, she called because her adult daughter is in an abusive relationship and she was pregnant at the time. And he was threatening to kill her, and she was really afraid for her. Yeah. And she just didn't know what to do. So she called us. So I said, great, we can do some safety planning with you. So we can help the friend or family member, whoever that might be, understand more about what some of the dynamics might be, being able to slide in, safety tips. One of the things to also consider, and a case against putting that pressure on the person who's in the abusive relationship, is that you might be the one outside person who they still are allowed to have contact with. The abuser isolates the victim from friends and families. That is always part of the control.
Right.
Because eventually then, when the victim is so deep into it and they feel helpless or they feel like they need to reach out, there's nobody around. He's isolated everybody from them. So it's even more important for us as the friend or the family member to not let that happen, to hold on as best as you can. You might be the one person who they have contact with, so you can be giving them our hotline number, our text number, talking to them about where to go and get a PFA and how that process works.
Right.
Like, you might be the one outside conduit piece of information that they have access to.
Right. Yeah.
It really also has to be about the victim's choices. You're not living their life. Like you said, as much as you think you know.
Right. You don't.
You're not in the bedroom. You're not, you're not behind those closed doors 24/7.
Right.
We don't know what's happening in those relationships, even though we think we do. So it really has to be about the victim and about their choice to make that decision. And then I say, just be ready to go. When they're ready to roll, you roll with them. Because in the long run, I believe that they will find their way through it, that they will find their way out of it. And they're going to need people to love them and support them and help them heal.
Right.
And if you're really in it for the long haul, if you're that sister, that friend, that family member, then you got to be in it for the long haul with them.
Right.
And that can be really hard.
Right. Because once they leave, it's not like you're like, oh, see, it's easy.
Right.
Yeah, you left. Congratulations. Right. Because now there's a lot of, now there's financial issues. Not that, there may have been financials before. Now there's different financial issues. Now there's childcare issues. Now there's, where am I going to go now? Now there's still going to be issues that person's going to need you for after, or if they don't leave, but they are trying some other way to solve the problem. Right. Right. Yeah. They're going to need you for lots more.
Yeah. So I had a friend, this was almost 20 years ago. We were finishing grad school and things like that. And I grew up with her. She was a friend who I've known for a long time. And I could tell, I knew what was going on. Like, I was picking up on all of the signs.
Yep.
She knew what was going on. She talked to me about it. There was there was a lot of emotional abuse, some verbal abuse happening. There were some incidences of physical abuse, although that wasn't primarily the tactics used. He was the more financially stable one in the relationship. And they had pets. They didn't have children together, but they had pets together.
Yeah.
And I remember once I figured out what was going on, I dug in. Like, I knew he didn't like me. And I don't know if it's because of the work that I did or if it was just that, I was a friend who was caring for her.
Right.
But it was clear that he really didn't like me much.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm here. Like, I was here before you got here, and I'm going to be here after you leave. Wow. So it was hard sometimes because I just, like, I would get in a room with him and, like, all of my spidey senses went up. It was not good. But we didn't spend much time at the house together. We did a lot of walking with the animals. Wow. And I remember her mom just, I'd have conversations with her mom and she's just like, I don't know what to do. And I said, you just have to stick it out. Like, right. We have to be here for her because she's going to figure it out. Yeah. And when she does, she's going to need us to be here because there's a lot of healing that's coming later.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. She eventually reached her breaking point. She couldn't take it anymore. He left town with the animals and she was heartbroken. But she was finally out of the relationship and able to move on from there. So it's not easy,
Right.
but that, that's my message to folks is you have to stick it out somehow, and reaching out and getting information from us at DVS is one of the ways that we can help you help your person and be a better support person for them.
Yeah. That's tremendous. I think that, I mean, this is never easy. There's not a second of this stuff that is easy to do. But, right, you either love somebody unconditionally or you don't.
That's what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because as I'm thinking about this, I think it's so fantastic that there's domestic violence services in our area. Not every area has an organization like this to be able to help people. Of course, there's a state hotline and there's those kinds of things, but it's really good to be able to have people that you can call, people that you can count on, resources that you know will be there.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
The other thing that a real quick plug that I would make is if somebody is planning to leave,
yeah,
it's a put together a plan. Think about, duplicate keys somewhere with somebody who can hold them for you, duplicate bank records or bank cards, duplicate birth certificates and social security cards. One of the things that we know is that, and you probably know this, Kelly, with the work that you're doing, you need those documents to access support from the community resources, right?
Right.
If you don't have your social security card or you don't have your birth certificate, you can't apply for X, Y, or Z.
Tons of things. And getting ID and documentation without ID and documentation is hard.
Yes, it is. It's a big roadblock. Sometimes it's enough to send people back home. I've seen it happen.
Right, because it's hard enough, and then you don't have anything with you, right? Like you forget your birth certificate.
Right.
So if you only have your driver's license and you don't have a passport, your birth certificate is like your number 2. Lots of times you need a number 2 in order to make, to do other kinds of things, open a bank account or whatever.
Yeah. So think about some of those things, and if somebody is out there is thinking that they might be leaving someday, start squirreling away those things, giving them to somebody who you trust, where they're going to be safe.
Right.
Maybe start putting some cash aside somewhere, a loose change jar somewhere, but start putting some money aside somewhere. Those loose change jars, I have a friend who had like $200 or $300 just collecting change over like 6 months.
Right.
That's it's a little something. It's some pocket money at least to get you started.
Right.
So think about some of those sorts of things. Clothing and stuff like that is always helpful, but there are resources in the community where we can get some of that assistance for folks. But and that's where a friend could be helpful, holding on to those things for you.
Yeah. Right, because somebody just isn't going to come into my house and search my stuff, but if they live with you, they can search all of your stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there are some real safety concerns and planning that can be thoughtful, so that people can figure it out. We're not, and we are not a program that's gonna. So funny, when I first started this work, I was taking a lot of hotline calls. That was my role, was hotline taker. And I remember there was this period of time where we'd be getting these calls about women who want to go underground. And I'm like, why are they like, I talked to a supervisor or something. She's like, we don't do that.
Right.
We don't do that.
Right.
That's not our job. But I don't know if they were watching too many Lifetime movies. It's not that easy. You don't just go underground and get a new identity.
Right. And I think that and you're right, that media has done a disservice in that kind of an area, right? That you think it's so easy and that can just happen in a second, and that there's always a guy to get you a new driver's license. Yeah, that doesn't work like that.
Right. Even in Pennsylvania, you can't leave the county that your county of residence without permission from the other parent if
Right.
there's a custody agreement in place. And I actually, when I worked in Gettysburg in Adams County, we had a woman who came into shelter. So, I mean, there was a documented history of abuse. She came from Dauphin County, from the Hershey area.
Yep.
He filed emergency custody to get the boys, to get their children, because she left the county without his permission with the children. So then she had to fight back to get her kids with her.
And that's
Because
expensive.
she was seeking safety.
Yep. And complicated, and makes you want to scream.
Right.
Right.
So there's a lot. It's very layered and nuanced, and I would hope that people will reach out and ask those questions. And we do have a legal clinic that provides free civil legal services. We'll talk about that in one of our future sessions.
Yep.
But they can reach out and get information and ask questions and, get that support as well.
Yeah. Thank goodness. Thank goodness that that you guys exist to be able to do this.
So I'm going to plug the hotline and text line because I feel like I need to.
Of course.
We have our 24-hour hotline. You can call us anytime, 717-299-1249. And if you're not able to call, we have a text line. You can text the word SAFE, S-A-F-E, to 61222.
Wonderful. We'll see you again next week.
All right. See you then.
Thanks, Angela. See you, everyone.